Hello and welcome to the Ditton Works YouTube channel. It's nearly Christmas, so there probably won't be any more videos from me for a little while. I will be far too drunk. So today's video it's a bit of a mishmash of things I've reviewed before. I have done a video on Celestion 100s before. I have done a video on Townshend super tweeters before. I have done a video on Townshend I sold a loudspeaker cable. I haven't yet done a video on my Celestion Kingstons. Now, today's video is really... Let me start. I've had 8 pairs of Celestion 100s over the years. I can't get on with them. When you look at the sort of specification of these, they were the best cabinet wooden version. Double figure of 8 brace, curved edges on the cabinets to reduce diffraction. They're much better looking than the SLs. They're the last in the SL series. The drivers were the best of the best. The tweeters are re-engineered and better ones than what was in the SL series. Everything, they're bi-wireable, they've got polycaps, decent crossovers. Everything points in the direction of these being tremendous. So obviously, I bought a pair, but I didn't get on with them. I've had 2 pairs this colour. I've had at least 2 pairs of black. I think I've had 3 pairs in that sort of walnut colour, and I had 1 pair that were really deep red colour, and they actually looked stunning. I don't know if somebody had restained these. I don't know. But I've had many pairs and I just couldn't get on with them. I've never been able to get on with them, and I couldn't understand why. So today I'm going to delve into what I thought I didn't like about them and what's happened today to change my mind. So like I said, the Celestion 100 is the last in the SL series. They are a wooden cabinet. They've got so much going for them. The curved edges, the double braces, the inset rear baffle, bi-wireable, polycaps in the crossover, the best and latest version of the drive units. Everything suggests they're good. But whenever I tried a pair, I always thought they were very hard in the mid-range, overly bright, and not that listenable, to be honest with you. The first pair I had was when I had my SL700 SEs, and these always played second fiddle to them. So sometimes I would use my A3s in the main room, big 3-way floor stander, and the 700s would go upstairs and sit next to a pair of 100s. I'll post some pictures of the various pairs I've had over the years. So that's those ones. And the 100s sometimes got used if I brought the 700s downstairs because the A3s were far too big to use upstairs. And I didn't mind them, but I didn't love them. The 700s just walked all over them. And even then I thought, well, it's got to be the Aerolam cabinet. But there's so much more to it than that. That if you compare a 700 to a 100, the tweeters are different, the base units are different, the crossover's different, and the cabinet's different. There's quite a lot of differences, so you're obviously going to get a different sounding speaker. But if you try any of the SL series, and I've had all of them, these were always my least favourite. Moved forward a few years, I had some in for repair that I repaired for the chap, and I obviously listened to those, and again was taken straight back. I don't like them, they're overly bright, they're a little bit hard. Maybe it's the cabinet's too well braced. Maybe that Celestion had tried so hard to push all the resonance out of the cabinet that maybe they'd already achieved that with the single figure of 8 brace in the SL6S, SI, so on and so on. That the double brace, perhaps that was the problem. The cabinet was too stiff, and that if you really wanted a high rigidity cabinet, you were better off using Aerolam like they did in the 600, 600 SI and 700, 700 SE. I thought it might be that. Then I realised that I didn't actually like the SL6 SI much, and the only difference between that model and the S is the crossover. The drive units, the cabinets, the internal wadding, everything is identical, but the SI has polycaps and a slightly different crossover topography, and they sound a bit hard. And I thought maybe that's it. Maybe that's why I don't like the SI and these that much, because they've got polycaps in the crossover. Okay, so I got a pair of Celestion Kingstons. I had a look inside, they've got polycaps in them, and I don't find them hard. So it's not the polycaps. So is it the cabinet, like we've just talked about, that double bracing? Is it that? Or is it a mixture of many things that these just aren't a well-designed speaker? Well, that can't be the case, because these were designed by Celestion's drive unit crossover guru, Bob Smith. Now, Bob Smith designed the A1, which I loved. I had a pair of those for years. The A Compacts, I've still got a pair of those. I use them every day. So I doubt it was Bob. Is it that I just don't like them? Or is it I haven't given them the benefit of the doubt? Now, 8 times it's got to be giving something the benefit of the doubt. Okay, so let's get to the point. I bought another pair, these ones, because they were local at a good price in their original packaging. And ironically, when I looked at the frequency plots, they were tested by my friend Matt McNulty, former colleague at Celestion. So that was a nice little connection there. I thought, brilliant. I know that Matt tested these. They're going to be spot on. And he even messaged me and said, what was the point? You don't like these. The result is going to be the same. So what did I do differently? I did take them apart. I had a look inside just to check everything was all okay, that they had the standard 300 crossover in it. I thought about tampering with that, but before I do that, why not just give them a listen? And I plugged them in and I thought, okay, they're not, I don't hate them, but I don't love them. They've still got some of those little idiosyncrasies that I don't like. And that was until I put them in. Now, super tweeters are one of those things that can cause controversy. Subwoofers cause controversy as well. I know many people who use an active subwoofer in the system and they love it. They've said that it helps weirdly improve not only the lower frequency range, it actually helps the upper bass, upper mid bass, and actually cleans up a lot of the overall sound of the loudspeaker. Well, super tweeters do that as well. They're cleaning it up from the top down. My personal belief is a super tweeter does a better job of cleaning up the entire frequency range than a subwoofer does. I don't think a subwoofer can clean things from the bottom up, because there's very rarely a frequency, or to my knowledge, not a frequency I can think of, that starts low and ends up high. I'm talking a natural thing, not a synthesizer or a note. It's just one sound, okay? So if you think of the Doppler effect when an ambulance comes past you, so it starts off high and it's low as it's going away, okay? So just bear that in mind for a minute. And I think that's what's kind of happening with the super tweeters, that some signals propagate in the HF and work their way down. I don't think there's many signals that propagate, if any, in the LF all the way up. So that's not me saying that subwoofers don't clean up some of the spectrum of sound. They probably do, but they are very hard to integrate. In this situation, the Townshend Maximum Super Tweeters plonked on top of these Celestion 100s radically, and I mean radically, changed the tonal characteristics of these loudspeakers in a very favourable way. Now, somebody did comment, do you really want to put super tweeters on a two-way loudspeaker that's already known for being fairly bright? Well, it didn't make them brighter. It just cleaned everything up. The amount of space and air around the instruments is unbelievable. These are not far behind my Kingstons in that regard. While I'm on that subject, the only reason I actually got another pair of these is these are very close cousins to the Kingstons. They're one step down. But the Kingstons have a very curved top to the cabinet, so the super tweeters don't fit on there very well, as where on these they will. And the other reason is just before I got rid of my last pair of LS35As, I tried these Townshend super tweeters on them and the same thing happened. They sounded phenomenal. I've always known the Townshend super tweeters did a job, and they did it well because my Spendor Classic 2.3s were vastly improved by the addition of these. But I'd yet to try it on a metal dome tweeter, which is part of the test today. A good friend of mine asked me, should he buy Townshend super tweeters for his Celestion A1s, a 1-inch titanium dome tweeter? And to begin with, I had my reservations. I didn't know whether it was going to work because I hadn't tried it myself. But he bought some, and the minute he plugged them in, floods of positive reports. So it worked. So I thought, I've got to try it myself. I'm not going to go out and buy a pair of A1s. I've had loads of... I had my A1s for a long, long time. Unfortunately, they don't work in this room. But I wanted to know what they sounded like on the Kingstons, and the best way to do it without developing a sort of mould that I could flush fit the Super Tweeters to the top of the curved cabinets was to buy their closest living descendants and try it on them. And let me tell you, it's made an unbelievable difference. These have just stunning sound to them now. It does make me think, God, should I go back through every pair of loudspeakers I've owned and try Townshend Super Tweeters on them? Well, it'd be an expensive experiment. I couldn't really afford to do it, but it doesn't work every time, because I tried the Townshend Super Tweeters on the Harbeth SHL5, which have their own built-in Super Tweeter, and it didn't seem to work. It just was a bit too much. It made it a bit muddled up top, if anything. As where these are just a standard two-way, although that 1.25 inch dome tweeter can go up very high before there's any issues with it. Adding the Super Tweeter made the world of difference. Also, introducing the Townshend iSolder loudspeaker cable. Now, when I first got my Kingstons, I couldn't use this cable with them because they sounded very bright. And the problem with the Kingstons was temperature, that the cabinets had got so cold that the drive units weren't really able to function properly or optimally, and it made the overall system bright. Adding the Townshend iSolder loudspeaker cable actually exaggerated that because it's a very open, very detailed cable. It's not that easy to quickly change cable on Celestion Kingstons due to the nature of how you feed the cable up through the centre column. So another good test was to try it on these, because they share very similar drive units, very similar sounding speaker. And the Townshend iSolder took them up a notch as well. I'm really pleased that I actually bothered to try and do this experiment again, because I honestly felt I was done with the Celestion 100. I'd tried so many times, I couldn't get on with them. And I know people who have had them themselves and struggled with it, they didn't like them. These sound very different to their brothers, if you like, the Celestion 300, the transmission line version designed by Martin Roberts, because they have so much more bass, so much more low frequency capability. It actually makes the HF less fatiguing, because you've got an even balance, I suppose, of bass to HF. Now what we've done is we haven't increased the LF, but we've cleaned up the HF and made these speakers just seem more balanced. It's really, really strange. So what I will do is I'm going to do some sound clips and I'll put them on here so you guys can hear what these sound like. And I think really what I'm trying to explain in this very long waffle is I've never been somebody who's just written off a speaker quickly, listened to it and gone, it's rubbish. I will always spend some time with it. But there are times when you're just like, this is not working for me. I'm not enjoying it. I'm not engaged with the music. You could investigate if there's something wrong with the speaker. Well, in this case, there's no way I've had 7 not well performing pairs. It's just generally the sound of the Celestion 100. That getting them right out into the room, getting them away from side reflections, putting decent cable on them, high mass stands, and adding those Townshend Super Tweeters made them sound wonderful. And the biggest bonus of all, I already had those things, so I haven't had to go out and buy them again. I already had them. All I needed to do was find a cheap set of these, which I've done, and it's helped me conclude a test that's in the future, which is the Celestion Kingstons. So once I've managed to fabricate a little, what should we call it, a little nestling device for the Super Tweeters to sit on the Kingstons, I've obviously got to make that look good as well. I would imagine that if they have the same effect on the Kingstons, then they are going to be absolutely divine. Just quickly to mention the tonal characteristic differences between the 100 and the Kingston in standard form. The Kingstons image way better. The Kingstons have a more refined HF. They don't have that hardness in the top end. They've got way more low end, because of the cabinet size and slightly different drive unit, and they just become a much more pleasant sounding loudspeaker. Ultra clinical, very detailed and quite fussy. They're a bit of a diva of a loudspeaker, which also made me wonder if these are just a little bit of a diva as well. Maybe not quite the Mariah Carey diva, but certainly up there, a little bit divas. Anyway, that's a very long waffle. I'm sorry to go on and on about it, but the point of this is actually sometimes it might be worthwhile revisiting something if you can, if you've got the chance, or a pair of speakers that you've put in the cupboard that you weren't overly sure with. Get them out and have another go with them. Give it a few hours, a few days, a few weeks to just try and get used to them, because sometimes it is difficult to go between pairs of loudspeakers, especially if they're radically different. All of us need a little bit of time to get used to it. But I've thoroughly enjoyed doing this experiment, because once and for all, it's proved to me that you can, or I can, make these sound more how I like or would want them to be. So it does mean that any of the other SL series loudspeakers I've got, minus the Kingstons because of their cabinet shape, I can put this Townshend Super Tweeter on them. So I'll record some sound clips. You guys can have a listen yourself, and I hope you have a fantastic festive season and enjoy the Christmas period like we all should do. Take care. I'll catch up with you soon.